Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of WP Product Talk. Today we're exploring what it's really like to build in WooCommerce in the age of blocks. Our guest today is Cathy Darling. She's from Backcourt Development. You might know her as Helga the Viking. She's one of the developers in the Woo ecosystem who are actively working alongside Woo at the cutting edge of blocks. So, the interactivity API, all that fun stuff. So we're going to dig in a little bit into the fun, the frustration, and the practicality of building on modern Woo. Let's get into it.
This is WP Product Talk, a place where every week we bring you insights, product marketing, business management and growth, customer experience, product development, and more. It's your go-to podcast for WordPress product owners by WordPress product owners. And now, enjoy the show.
All right, so I'm Ian Misner. I'm with Kestrel. We do a bunch of WooCommerce extensions here. And we got Katie, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Katie Keith, founder and CEO at Barn2 Plugins.
And a couple of quick announcements as we get started. I do want to give a huge thanks to Freemius. They've stepped in as the exclusive growth sponsor for WP Product Talk. Freemius is a merchant of record that handles everything around selling software, so payments, subscriptions, licensing, tax compliance, let you focus your time on building your product.
Yeah, and the easiest way for you to help the show is to hit subscribe right now. It only takes a second and it really helps us hit our goal of 10,000 subscribers. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And so today, as I said, we have Cathy here with us to discuss what it's really like building products in the new WooCommerce block era. So she's working a lot and, pushing through and getting through the headaches that a lot of us have faced and staying on the cutting edge. So Cathy, welcome. For those who might not know you, can you share a little bit about your background and what you've been working on?
Hi, sure, Ian. My name's Cathy Darling. I am the founder and CEO, though mostly it's a one-woman shop at Backcourt Development. And I have 3 plugins in the WooCommerce ecosystem. I'll go free gift coupons, mix and match products, and my most famous one, probably Name Your Price. And they are all now like over 10 years old, which I can't really believe, but seems to be true if we agree to like linear passage of time. I'm just kind of looking at how to keep them, up to date with Woo and kind of be the first one out there getting things ready for the shifting paradigm, I guess.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for coming on. And for everyone watching live, we do encourage you to leave questions, comments, anything you want in the chat there, and we'll highlight comments to discuss with Cathy throughout the show. So Cathy, you have been in the space a while here now, so you've seen Woo move and evolve through, quite a bit of change. And actually, so the reason we really asked you on here is you show up a lot in the Woo community Slack. So, you're experimenting with all the new work they're doing. Both Katie and I, of course, have delved into that a little bit with our teams. And we just, really see you pushing ahead with a lot of the interactivity API work, the new add to cart experience and all that. So, we're hoping to get you to share a little bit about your experience building with the blocks work, what's worked well and what's been challenging.
Of course, I don't entirely know where to start. So, if you catch me floundering, do help steer me back on. But I think because my plugins are kind of so old and stable, I am personally just sort of like, easily distractible and also kind of interested in like, what is WooCommerce doing? Oh, this thing is new and shiny. Like, let me look at it. But I've kind of taken I guess 2 of my plugins will be affected by the add to cart switching to interactivity. And I'm just kind of, trying to stay ahead of it, one, but also like just kind of, it's just kind of interesting. So it's really kind of caught my attention like, oh yeah, this is the shiny thing. Let me work on it for a while. Cause there's, as much as I appreciate Name Your Price and what it has done for my life, like there's only so much it needs, to still do the thing it says it's going to do. It's not a massive scale plugin, but when the cart block and the checkout blocks came out a couple of years ago and they were all front end rendered and they're still quite frustrating to deal with. I thought I would, because I have this opportunity and because something new kind of caught my eye, I feel like I'm getting the opportunity to say like, hey, like I personally am going to need to do this, which means other people are going to need to do this in terms of, extending add to cart. And I mean, that's such a core piece of, any e-commerce experience anyway. But I've given one talk in my whole career because I just don't love planning talks. But my one talk was about like, hey, WooCommerce is so customizable. It's like 80% of the way there. It's the suit off the rack and you tailor it just that little bit to really make it your own. And for me, the cart and checkout blocks kind of deviated from that extensibility principle that I thought, and again, I don't work for WooCommerce, but I thought that was the superpower of WooCommerce. And so I'm pleased that like the add to cart block progress is, taking some of my feedback saying, oh yeah, like you're right. Like, so, X is going to need to be extensible. And like, how can we do that in a way that's, I don't know, not going to drive ourselves crazy with kind of the potential for, breaking everything. When everyone starts to extend everything, you start extending the same thing. Like the three of us are all plugin people. Like we all have three different plugins doing the same thing, working in the same space. I don't know, for me, the hardest part about supporting my plugins is, oh yeah, like it is going to step on some toes sometimes, or someone else actually is going to step on my toes, and so on and so forth. So we've just been able to kind of go back and forth and talk about like, oh, I do need this extensibility, and how can we do that in a way that I guess we won't have to like bang our heads into the walls for the next 10 years over. So
yeah, would you be able to share a little bit about maybe a specific experience where you were able to the reason I ask is I've seen you've been pretty successful at getting, changes actually made in WooCommerce itself and asking for things, and I mean, writing the code yourself and having it committed. Would you share a story of when and why you
I would say that's probably the key for me getting changes made. It's like, oh yeah, I need this, so here, like send it out. I think specifically like mix and match plug products is a custom product type. That's one of my plugins, and it creates a custom product type. So they were building the add to cart, block with all of the, I call it blockified, just like, all the sub inner blocks. And it only supported the core product types, right? Like simple, variable, and grouped. And even grouped and variable were kind of like coming along after. And I said, well, hey, like I'm going to need to display my product type. So how can I do that in a way that will, match your paradigm? And I got rid of the hard-coded like simple variable support and said like, all right, we're going to put a point of extensibility in here that says like, hey, if this template is registered here, we're going to render my template. So we were able to just kind of go back and forth and say like, all right, this is kind of how Cathy proposed it. Let's iterate on that a little bit and say like, okay, now this is like the new, it's not a standard yet, right? Because that block is still in beta. So this is the new current, I guess, proposal for like, okay, we're going to have these, and my blocks all render on the front end at the moment. The admin side still isn't there. Like you can't go in and, if you've looked at the add to cart beta block, add to cart with options beta, I think it's all, the full name of it is called. If you look at that block and you pick simple or variable, you can switch between product types. And if you pick one of the core types, the admin editor changes accordingly. Like, right, the variable product options block shows up, for example, or the grouped product block shows up. That doesn't work with my product type yet. So that's a next hurdle. That's a 2026 problem at this point for me. That's circle back in the new year type of date for me already. But so that's still waiting to happen. And then I guess I'm going to need the exact same thing for name your price. And that's a little bit different because it's not a custom product type. It's basically just meta that says, hey, like this product supports entering your own price on the front end. So that one I think will be actually a little bit trickier, which is kind of why I started with mix and match. I was like, mix and match matches kind of what, Woo already does for core, but custom product, features or add-ons, or there's a lot of products that add meta and change the way a simple product or a variable product is displayed, right? And we're all going to need a way to make our plugins work together in that space. Like right now I have, the old paradigm, for example, name your price works with product add-ons all together on a simple product. It's going to need that on the other side of this paradigm too.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's very wise. Sometimes you just need to do it, and then they're more likely to accept your changes, because we've had a few experiences at Barn 2 where they've refused to do what we needed in order to modify, in this case, the checkout block. I hate that we have to tell our customers who are using a particular plugin not to use the block checkout, because it's impossible.
Yeah.
And I've talked to you about this privately as well. It is literally impossible to display what we need. And they recently rejected our suggestion. But maybe we need to actually submit that pull request, do the work ourselves. Maybe if we've done that legwork, they're more likely to accept it. So I think that's good advice. But my question for you is about timing. As a WooCommerce plugin company, I find it really difficult to know when to invest the development time in making our plugins extensible. For example, there was the beta product editor a while ago, which was then pulled. And so we could have done lots of work to make, say, our variation editing plugin or whatever usable with that. And I'm glad we didn't, because it was then pulled. So
For sure.
given that projects get started and not completed as part of that development cycle, what would be your advice about when people should integrate with blocks?
Oh, I do not know that I have made a good decision sinking all this effort into the interactivity API. So I couldn't say do it. I'm doing it to kind of scratch an itch because I'm a little bit bored by my own plugins. If it's okay to say that, it's piquing my curiosity more than it's a good business decision. I also did. I integrated Name Your Price with that product editor that you're referencing, and thankfully that only took me 3 to 4 hours. But I knew Mix and Match was going to be the more complicated version, and I'm glad I didn't get into Mix and Match for the same reasons you're saying. And actually, the Name Your Price integration would have taken me 1 hour if there hadn't been an error in the documentation that I had to fix for them. So that was thankfully a minor investigation. That was also hey, this is interesting. Shiny. Let me squirrel. Let me go do this. And that one wasn't thankfully too costly. I haven't actually heard what the status of that is, but I remember liking it, and I remember liking the way extensibility was approached there. It's okay, I can register some fields in PHP, and then you handle the rendering, which was a massive improvement from, say, the analytics section of WooCommerce, which is well due for an update, right? That was one of the first things they converted to React, and that was back when I was I'm never learning React. But it still is a status of it's still in a state where you have to go in and register all your components and write everything in React and compile it. And I'm in the WooCommerce community space ranting on my soapbox about how I hate the build tools all the time because they inevitably fail on me half of the time. So I forgot where we started this. Is this a good idea? Is this a good business investment? I don't know. Probably not. But I'm lucky, very lucky, super lucky to be at a place where I don't always have to lead from is this a good business investment? I can kind of go from is this piquing my interest? Is this keeping me involved and interested in WooCommerce? That's kind of where I am after 10, 11 years. So.
And that's really valuable for the community as well, because you're actively pushing things forward for other people. You've referred to doing the actual code changes and getting that accepted. You also made a reference to documentation a minute ago. So for anybody who doesn't know this process, how do you actually do these things, submit things to Woo so that they are more likely to accept them, documentation or code?
I'm trying to remember if that specific documentation was managed over on GitHub, but I know they moved some of their documentation to GitHub, so you can actually send a pull request against their documentation, I think. Otherwise, I just get on my soapbox in the community chat Slack, and some of that I think is I don't know, I've been around long enough that people are all right, she's not just ranting at clouds. She might have a point. So maybe I get a little bit more, I don't know, respect on my name or whatever, not to be an asshole about it, but there's something to be said for, hey, this is, I wave my flag and say, this is actually a problem. I think if I'm having trouble understanding this at 10, 11 years of developing with WooCommerce, I've been around before a lot of people at WooCommerce joined WooCommerce lately, because it's just been around so freaking long. I'm if I'm having trouble understanding this, you're new people, newer people to WooCommerce or newer coders in general, aren't going to understand this. So like, let's make that change. Or, the code changes are kind of similar. Like, hey, I'm having this problem. I need to extend this in this way. Here's my use case. Like, I think you yourself are going to have some matching use cases, right? Like when I was talking about extending the add to cart block for mix and match products, guess who else is going to have that exact same problem? The cousin to mix and match, which is product bundles, which you own. So like, you're gonna need this too. So the smart business play would be let them do it first, but that's not the interesting play. So here we are. So I don't know. Just the answer, I guess, is I don't know. Make a good case, state your argument, and send the code.
Yeah, and I think that there is something to be said for something that you've consistently done is the showing up, the magic of WordPress. The people who show up are the people who get to make the thing, right? And that is something that, as a member of the Woo community Slack, you're very active. I think it's like you and Lee are basically the two people frequently showing up with like constructive feedback there. The thing that I've struggled with a bit, and this is kind of tied to that ROI question or when we start building it, that luckily there's people like you in the community who are just plowing ahead anyways. But there is this concept Woo's introduced in the last like 2 or 3 years of like curated extensibility, which is very like deliberate on their part. But at the same time, you're able to sort of push through that and, help them identify where that extensibility belongs. I guess my question on that, so the struggle I've had is that there is this perception with WooCommerce that it is like unstable, or that the performance issues are of the platform and not of the individual site. And a lot of what they're doing is likely to try to solve that. And again, I don't know if they've publicly shared why, but it does result in teams like ours struggling with, you mentioned earlier, the compatibility with all of, how do you avoid stepping on other teams' toes, and how do you make sure everything works the way it used to? So when you encounter those issues, what steps are you taking to kind of get from point A to point B to convince Woo, this fits within their concepts of curated extensibility?
I will give them a lot of credit and say that I think that idea of curated extensibility has evolved, and they've become quite a bit more flexible about it in the past couple of years. Because, I mean, you saw this, Katie, with your plugin, but like when the checkout and cart blocks came out, the curated extensibility, the way I heard it, the way I received it was like, nah, we're just not going to do that. We have no interest in making these blocks extensible. And I was like, damn, like we've been around doing this for so long. And again, maybe this is just me thinking different. It is me thinking differently, right? As a extension developer, I have a different point of view than the core team. I'm like, I think, maybe because my bank account thinks that the big benefit of WooCommerce is being able to extend it like that. That personally benefits me. So I'm like, but it also benefits my customers. They need to do something because, and I said this in my talk. My talk is years ago now, but it's coming to my head. Like every business is unique, right? So like they need to do different things, even in the checkout, even in the cart, which are, again, like the add to cart button, like really pivotal to your, the e-commerce store in general, right? Like, and I understand WooCommerce, and I understood at the time WooCommerce was saying, we think we can improve checkout by having it break less. And I'm like, yes, that's probably true. And that's a really important consideration, but also like you've made it super uniform. That's how you're not breaking it. You made it super uniform, which means then you can't customize it for every store that needs something slightly different. And again, my biased point of view was like, that's the primary differentiating factor between like a WooCommerce and a Shopify, like is you can do whatever your store needs at WooCommerce with the right combination of plugins or the right custom code, whatever. So I don't know. Remind me where we started, and I'm clearly losing my train of thoughts, going in a couple different directions there. But
it's super helpful, and I know my question was pretty broad, but Katie, I think you had a follow up there.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing about Shopify. The Shopify checkout is not extensible, and that's very intentional that they've created this amazing checkout that converts, and they are confident with that. But I think the current management are increasingly aware that they need to play on WooCommerce's strengths, which is the flexibility. And so they can't do that because that's not what WooCommerce is famous for. People expect to be able to do what they want in order to customize it right down to the checkout, which we've always been able to customize. So it's good to see steps going in the right direction with that. It's a shame, though, as you were saying, that initially the attitude was that it shouldn't be extensible, because I think that's caused some of the problems they're having now. It's harder to build an extensibility later than if that was the principle from the beginning, which does cause dilemmas when something is currently impossible.
For sure. And it's just been, where was I going? It was just kind of it was very limiting, right? Like I have actually all three of my plugins like to add a little link in the cart to edit the thing in the cart, right? And they all kind of do it a little bit different. They all function a little bit differently, but they all have a link there. And there was no way to add it in like a way that made sense. I have added it, but it's like the super hacky filtering of the API response of the product short description. I was like, this is not how this is supposed to be built. I mean, I guess the customer doesn't care, but like I care because it's not pretty. And it's just kind of, it's just, I do see some, circling back to interactivity, I see some potential there for a cart checkout going that way with blocks and inner blocks. I think they already have the mini cart blockified with interactivity. And I did some experimental work because, again, I was, looking for something shiny to work on that didn't actually have a business application for me. But I started building the bones of like an interactivity API cart, which I was like, man, if we get back to having, if we go to having blocks and inner blocks, well, then all three of us can start adding inner blocks on a cart on a line by line basis, which you cannot do now unless you filter the short description like me, which is a weird choice because, I mean, if all three of us need to start doing that, it might not work anymore. So I don't know. I don't know that they'll do that because I had a problem with speed, but also that's not my area of expertise, like making things super fast. But there are other people who are good at that, right? So I don't know. I'm like, maybe you could do that as a potential and just instead of trying to add a compatibility layer or an extensibility layer on top of the current cart checkout blocks, maybe there's just, a new evolution for those blocks where they have, inner blocks. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do there. Like I said, I just kind of got that one in my brain for like a week or two, built something that kind of sort of started to work, and I was like, I need to be doing something else, Cathy. And I was like, Cathy, so then I just kind of left it. But it got pretty far in the sense of like, oh, it did actually work using the interactivity API. So like, that's a possibility. I don't know if they're running with it. I don't know if that's a high priority for them because I don't know if it's a high priority for them to add extensibility to the cart and checkout. Like that would be a pivot from where they've been. Like, as they said to you, like we like where the cart is, the cart and checkout blocks are, but I think they've hindered their own adoption rate because, all of us have to say you can't use the cart block or the checkout block and still use my feature, which you need for your business case. So I don't know where that one's going. Like I said, at the moment I'm working heavily in the add to cart, single product page type of stuff. But that was just something that caught my eye one day, and I procrastinate a lot, which is also why I'm in the community Slack working on other people's problems. So.
Yeah, we do appreciate that, though. We did a fair amount of work with a couple of potential block solutions for some of the plugins that we acquired a year or two ago. And one of the big obstacles we found is even in the areas where we could build the thing, we would have to replace the entire block. So it wasn't really extending something. It was just replacing it altogether. And the reason we haven't released a lot of that work is because then you must use the Kestrel version of something rather than the actual WooCommerce thing. And trying to avoid, taking over the WooCommerce experience is something we've been very deliberate about. I think the reason I mentioned that is as you talk about curated extensibility and what their goals are around that, sort of like the magic of WordPress with hooks and filters, and we could all, completely ruin our site or make them amazing is what they're trying to protect us against. But I think for teams like ours, that is what's actually making these challenges around like ROI. Is it worth it? like a meaningful question. I don't know if I have actually a question to land on with that, but I think that's really just where I've been with these problems.
I mean,
right?
just to sort of reiterate what I was saying, like if you're looking at it from a return on investment, I would say it's too early. Like, I mean, just in terms of me working on it from a, personal curiosity stake, sometimes it feels too early because like I still run into walls and say, oh, like you just cannot do the thing, because it hasn't been considered yet. Part of that is the curiosity, and it like, I can kind of go through that and say, ping the guys who are the people who are in charge of the interactivity experience and say like, oh, I need this, like, what's a good solution here? And then, oh, I'm going to write it now. I'll send you the PR in a day. But from a return on investment standpoint, no, I don't think so. Not yet. It's too early. It would have to be a little bit further along. Basically, wait for me to finish first, basically, and then you're probably better to start.
Well, and I will say, I'm literally, when our devs are encountering issues, I ask them to check with Cathy, to be honest. So,
oh gosh.
Yeah. Anyways,
I'll send you in my invoice. You can pay me in pizza. So.
Yeah, will do. So I'm going to grab a couple of comments here. You got Marcus here yelling, I have a solution is a lot more effective than I have found a problem, which, Cathy, I think you're doing a very good job of demonstrating that works.
Oh, yeah, that's what I try for. I know that definitely is responsible for getting some of my stuff merged into WooCommerce sooner rather than later. Because, I mean, it still is quite a bit of work, right? Like I see the folks reviewing it, they have to test it. Like there's still work involved in testing my solution, but at least that removes the need to create the solution themselves. So that definitely works.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick here is asking when we should expect your next PR. So.
My next PR probably is a little bit delayed because my side gig is as a USA athlete for the national team handball team. And we're in training camp next week, so I'm not planning on doing any PRs for the next 2 weeks. So
awesome. So I will say, I mean, we have talked a lot about the pains and all that, and all the how you overcome it. But I mean, obviously, there's something still driving you forward to keep doing it, right? Like the excitement, the fun, whatever it is. What should other product builders, take away from your experience? It's like, where's the joy? What should we get excited about? It's too early. When is it no longer too early?
I think there's value in doing stuff just because you enjoy it, so like I said, that's not a super great business proposal, but also it keeps me kind of interested. Like, let me work on stuff I like working on. Sometimes that is not my stuff. Sometimes that's core WooCommerce stuff. Sometimes it's a random person's stuff in the Slack community. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's an interesting question. How would I solve that? Especially if that keeps me from working on some of the more tedious stuff in my own plugins. Like I was just working on a feature last week or week two, whenever I was working on it last. And I was like, oh, the feature's built, but now I got to go and, update the REST API support and the Store API support and the import export support. Like, I was like, that's the tedious stuff I don't want to do. So I don't know, finding stuff that keeps your interest and, slogging through some of the other stuff sometimes is necessary, but always finding something kind of new to keep working on.
Yeah, so you talk about it being maybe too early to be cost effective to integrate with some of the blocks. I feel like maybe that applies to some blocks more than others. The checkout one, it's not, depending on what you want to do to it, probably not time. Whereas the ones that display products on certain pages feel a bit more advanced. A few years ago, I hate that having to document this doesn't work because it's impossible and we are waiting for WooCommerce to do X. But now we've actually managed to integrate with a lot more than we could, say, 2 years ago. So it feels like they're more advanced. Do you have any kind of hierarchy in your head of which ones it is time to integrate with and are complete, and which ones maybe wait a bit longer or push to change?
I don't know if I have a great answer to that. Like I said, two of my plugins are very specific to the product page, right? So that's why I'm, I guess, leading the charge on making sure the add to cart block, and as that gets, as that progresses, and it's progressed quite a lot in the past year. So that's why I have my focus there, because like I can, at least the folks I've been interacting with seem really motivated to get that kind of, I won't say shipped, but like to a more stable place. It probably will stay in beta for a while, but to get it stable, although I'll really know it's stable when I start hearing they are working on extending it themselves. Like, when I hear product bundles and product add-ons are doing the work, then I'll be like, okay, they are serious about this, but they've invested quite a bit of time. That doesn't mean they might not scrap it, but Woo itself has invested a lot of people hours in getting the add to cart block, progressing to support all the product types that they have, and now starting to support some of my product types. So the add to cart block, I guess, is where that's where I'm putting my energy, because it affects me personally. I'm not super aware of some of the other blocks, so I just not informed enough to say about the others. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I'm just going to throw out a little bit again of my experience with Kestrel, and I'd love to get your input on this, Cathy, especially since you spend a lot more time on the block work than what I think my team probably has recently. When we acquired a lot of like the legacy WooCommerce marketplace products, one of the intentions around that was to take these things that have been around a while, modify them, and make them work in the new world of blocks, right? So, help bring Woo over the messy middle of the whole thing. And we've actually encountered a lot of issues with that. I mean, we've done a lot of releasing things, but there's sort of like two things that we've ended up doing that feel a bit like cheating because of the difficulties. Number one is a lot of the times we're just encouraging people to put shortcodes in a block rather than actually building a block, which I do think that's probably what most people are actually doing in most surfaces. But then number two, even when we go through the effort of building the actual implementation in the world of blocks, and as a specific example, in Checkout WC, we have the order bumps feature. The whole interface is in the block editor, and we're actively getting feature requests from people to just put it in, like PHP admin screens, like customers are asking for it. So this kind of gets me to the question of like, from your customers with mix and match and name your price, like, are you hearing from your users that you need more block support, or is this something that is like purely driven by moving with the platform and the excitement of learning and all that?
I definitely haven't had that specific request. Like, hey, I will say, name your price doesn't offer a ton of customization. It puts a text input above the add to cart button, right? Like, it's not doing a ton of things. I do want to add that out a little bit more. People are using it for donations, so I want to make that work a little bit better than it currently does. Mix and match has more to it on the visual user interface side, right? And what the front end is, and needing to therefore customize that a little bit. There's a lot you can do with PHP snippets, because I believed in that. And so when I wrote it, there's filters and hooks everywhere. And then anytime someone asked for something, I was like, yeah, I can throw a hook in there. Why not? But there's a need to control how that looks visually. And I have some customizer settings. And I think now mostly you can still access those, but I think in some themes maybe you cannot. I haven't found which ones it is, but I've gotten that report once that like, oh, I couldn't customize it because the settings are nowhere. And I'm like, ooh, I wish you would tell me more about this, friend, because I would probably try to fix it for you. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, okay, at a minimum, I need to port those customizer visual settings into the the block editing paradigm. Like, do we want to show this as a grid or a table? Like, that's literally the first one. And then how many columns do you want? Do you want to show a thumbnail? Do you want to show, I think I have plus minus button support, but like WooCommerce kind of has that in their quantity input. And, just carry some of that over so that people can then customize the front end display of a mix and match product and all of its, child product options as from a visual standpoint, not needing to add snippets, even though I am partial to snippets, but like I want to have the visual options. And I'm like, okay, so what? And I guess I go back to curated extensibility. Which features, which visual parts do you need to control? Like, because you can make your user interface, even in the admin side, like you can make it wild and control every damn thing. And I think blocks will give you a little bit more if I can make it so that you can control what the single child product looks like if you're selling a 6-pack of sodas, I can make it. I think what I'm shooting for is my target goal with the blocks is like, okay, if you for some reason want to display the product title and then the product thumbnail and then the product quantity stepper, you could do that. Or if you want to invert that for some reason and display the quantity and then the product title, like you can do that right now with hooks and filters. But I think with the blocks, you'll be able to do that in the editor, which is, I think that's the goal, my goal for that project.
Yeah,
when we get there. When we get there.
It raises a dilemma talking about customer requests of another factor, which is leading us to use shortcodes when we probably shouldn't, which is when we get customer requests, they are just as likely to be about Elementor or Divi or something else and not the block editor. And so when we're talking about building up actual functionality in blocks, like say the ability to create an entire mix and match product and select the products and the layout within the block, that is actually going to be a lot more work if you're going to want to do that in Elementor and all the other major page builders as well. So it's so much easier to do something centrally, say in your plugin settings, and then insert it, maybe using a much simpler block or a shortcode or something. So I find that tension between the distribution of different page builders in the market and how quite a lot of them have very high market share as adding to that dilemma that if we put resources into blocks, we are losing another element of our market and we can't do everything to the standard we would want.
Great, you've given me something new to worry about, but
you must know about that.
I know they exist, right? I just don't pay attention to them too much, except when people come into support and say, like, your mix and match product looks bad. And I'm like, does it look bad? Or are you in a page builder and it's weird and you've got weird styles you've applied yourself? Or, there's one page builder that I won't name right now, but like there's one page builder that I tried to contact and said, you're breaking mix and match every time somebody uses it. Could you please not, flex display the add to cart? Never heard back from them. So I just, put one line of CSS in my own plugin to just not have to deal with that support ticket ever again. And, that's actually a driving factor of obviously support, dictates a lot of what we do. And sometimes the goal for me is just to reduce my own support load. I'm like, okay, I don't have to keep doing that. I can just put, but that's a good point. And I guess there's nothing really wrong with maybe us driving it through blocks and then having some sort of PHP wrapper that people can use in other places. Like the shortcode grab a block template and render it out wherever you wanted. Like, I think there's ways to kind of do both without having to sink too many resources into the page builders, because I certainly don't have the capacity. Like, I am the primary coder at my company, and always have been. And there's only so many. That's part of why I never even got to a 4th and 5th plugin. Like, I always wanted to make another, and I just ran out of Cathy power. Like I need another Cathy, and I don't have one. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that the page builder experience we have very similar with some of our products. And when we're dealing with other plugin companies in the Woo space, you tend to just communicate and figure out how to, avoid compatibility issues. We typically, with page builders, we just fix it ourselves as a default assumption, which isn't necessarily better, but it tends to be a lot easier, I would say.
Yeah,
right?
That's fair. I would say amongst our, all of us in the WooCommerce space, like if you make the effort to like do things, I guess the most WooCommerce-ish way you can manage, like you reduce your own support loads because you reduce the points of friction where things just kind of break. I mean, things do sometimes just kind of break, and it's I think you have to sort of accept that that's a possibility. Like when you start adding 50 plugins, not that 50 is inherently wrong, but like as soon as you get 2 that maybe just don't quite talk to each other correctly, or, I think I had some sort of image optimizing plugin was breaking the mix and match add to cart like sometime this week. And I was like, man, I never would have. I mean, I just cannot test everything. It's not possible. We cannot cover everything, but it's simultaneously like the greatest asset. You can do anything because you can just stack the plugins on, and also like the biggest Achilles heel, because like, okay, as you start stacking them on, especially if you're not paying close attention, they can start interfering with each other. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, I think it's part of the process that you just sort of have to accept a little bit, because it gives you what it gives you, the ability to use lots of things.
Yeah, I actually made a few people kind of mad at me on Twitter over the weekend with when you install 80 plugins, if they're coming from 80 different developers, you're letting 80 people write code on your site. The odds that one of them have done something wrong goes up. You should be vetting the dev team just as much as you are vetting the product itself, right? So we got a couple of comments here. It looks like Marcus hoping shortcodes never go away. One of the single best parts of building in WordPress. I would add to that the hooks and filters that we're kind of replacing in a lot of ways are just as magical. And then with that, a lot of his Elementor pages, products, it's just a bunch of shortcodes, basically, right? So anything for you two to add on that?
Not really. I haven't used, I don't actually make or maintain too many websites, so I haven't used too many page builders in general. I think we've had to help some folks with, I think, different page builders when they're trying to use our products in them. Or there was a time, I think Elementor in specific has 2 add to cart widgets, and one is just like the button, and people will put the add to cart button in and then wonder why my plugins don't work. I was like, well, you don't have any of the core hooks that are required for me to display my options, so you just have a button. Try this other one. So that's about the extent of my working with really any page builder in the last 5 years. So
yeah, absolutely. Especially if with you being so all in on blocks, it would make sense that you'd be really focused on sort of the default experience there as well. So Cathy, we do try to wrap up every one of these shows with a roundtable question. So, if someone's thinking about diving into making a new product for WooBlocks or updating an existing product to work better, would you have any specific advice, one piece of advice for somebody looking to get started on that path?
This is probably advice to myself, but it's twofold, I guess. And I've said said the second part, but the first part is, always solve a problem. And then I think the second part is, find something you're going to like working on, because you might be working on it for a very long time. So,
Katie, how about you?
Mine would be to approach working with blocks flexibly. So start by seeing what's possible. Hopefully what you want is possible. If not, then be proactive and positive, communicate with the Woo team, consider whether to submit the change yourself in order to make it happen. If that is not approved for whatever reason, then think creatively about what you can do. I'd say the worst case scenario is telling people not to use core WooCommerce features, and I try not to do that where possible. But if something just simply isn't possible yet, then document that in a positive but clear way to your users and keep checking back, because it probably will become possible in the future, and then you can add that integration.
Yeah, for sure. We've all seen the evolution of WooCommerce, right? And it's only going to keep evolving, especially as we keep finding new use cases to say oh, you need to do this, or we would love you if you could do this, So for sure, it'll just keep evolving as all of us keep pushing on it.
Yeah, and for myself, actually, I think quick story on this is actually we acquired Express Shop Page from Barn2, among other things. And Express Shop Page is an example of a plugin that in the old PHP way of things, you needed snippets, you needed to write code, you needed a plugin to make things happen. In a perfect world, you actually just wouldn't need a plugin at all for that in blocks. All it does is moves, the variation editor, the variation drop down in the quantity field to the catalog pages. So, realistically, blocks should make that happen. So to tie that into a piece of advice is for somebody who's getting started or looking to build a new product, I would actually encourage you to not think about what things used to be like at all. Just look at what blocks are, how blocks work. And, in the new paradigm, in the new way Woo is building and the direction they're going, what would that look like for that instead? So solving that problem by ignoring all the old ways altogether instead, right? All right, so I guess really quick on that, I will drop in Nick's comment as well, actually, because I think that ties to what I was saying quite well. Just blocks done right should open that up with, more no-code experience. It should make it easier for more people to use Woo and to build on Woo, right? All right, so I guess that's a wrap. Cathy, thank you so much for joining us. Where can
Thank you for having
anyone
me.
watching find you? Where should they find you? Where should they follow you?
I don't know. I'm not on Twitter anymore. So the WooCommerce Slack community, as you said, I'm Helga the Viking there, and I don't know. I'm kind of always around.
Absolutely, and I'll double down on. I'm looking for you. I'm using the Woo community Slack, so if anyone's looking.
I was gonna say for sure. I think I got peer pressured into like creating an Instagram, and I wouldn't probably give it out here, but I don't use it anyway. So what's the point? But yeah, that's probably the place.
And your products are primarily on the Woo marketplace, right? Like
the three of them are, yes, all at WooCommerce.com. I mean, my website is, I think, backcourt.io, but I don't post on that as much as I should. So I don't know. I'm terrible at marketing. Like, I just like coding things. I'm just a girl who likes coding things. What can I say?
If you build it, they will come, right? That's how it works. Yeah. So for everyone watching, if you're enjoying the shows, please do us a favor and stop what you're doing right now. Hit the subscribe button. It tells YouTube that other people who are looking to build WordPress products should find the show. Special thanks again to Freemius for helping us grow our audience here as well.
Yeah. And next week, Matt and Ian will be talking to Nick Hamsey about making WordPress weird and building for fun in WordPress. That actually connects with some of the things that Cathy was saying, doing things because you enjoy doing them, and that's good.
Yeah, not even on purpose. Looking forward to it. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.